Hello, listeners. Welcome to Quote Unquote with KK. This is the healthcare podcast of season 2021. I wanted to bring up a very serious issue that all of us have faced with regards to our parents who are senior citizens around the world. Some of them have been lonely, living in prolonged isolation during the COVID lockdown. And let me also kind of bring out my own personal experience. My dad was a cardiac patient, and I've seen him go down on his fitness and his well-being during the COVID lockdown. Obviously, I've given him a smartwatch to monitor his activity and whatnot, but things don't work what you think well for your parents. And I'm not just the only one. There are 130 million senior citizens in India. I've got Ravi Bala, who's a tech evangelist out of US, and he understands the Indian diaspora as well as the US diaspora as well. I would love to just quickly introduce Ravi from his background and what he has done. Ravi is a startup mentor in AgeTech and Remote Monitoring. He is a co-founder and former board member at HealthSignals, leader in technology solutions for better senior living. As an innovator and expert in mobile health, conversational AI, and digital strategy, he has a successful track record of creating and managing teams of independent thinkers. He has a tenacious dedication and compassion and dignity in the workplace. As a teacher, mentor, and coach at heart, Ravi works with several startups as an advisor. He is currently chair of Capital for Good and board member for Girls First Fund, a global effort to end child marriages, which is very interesting effort. Ravi, I must commend you. He was a board member of a startup corp and a member of Drexel University AgeWell Collaboratory. He has taught courses in digital strategy in multiple MBA colleges in Philadelphia. His latest passion is changing the model for elder care with the aid of conversational AI, robotic, and passive no-touch monitoring. So welcome, Ravi. I must say, Ravi is also doesn't look like a senior citizen, but he is so fit and very young. And I'm sure the passion with which what he's driving for his peer senior citizens, I'm sure he should be young at heart as well. So Ravi, let me start by talking about now that the COVID pandemic will see its end, hopefully, in the next few months with the immunization drive across the world. Hopefully, the senior citizens would be the first cohort of population after the frontline health workers and what have you. What sort of applications or ideas you think we need to have for our senior citizens in this transition time of going out of pandemic to the new normal along the immunization time? Are there any solutions that you think are already available, or we need to probably bring some sort of solutions for the interim so that you can monitor any adverse events or allergies or whatever you get out of some of these vaccination in the senior citizens? Any ideas or thoughts there?
I'll address one of the larger issues earlier on, and this is the thing that the senior citizens, or all of us, really need in this time of crisis. Is we're all tired of being isolated, and we can't wait to get back together with friends and family and all of that stuff. And I think Zoom calls only go so far in terms of being able to on a laptop. What I've found about 2 or 3 years ago, I actually when my parents lived in this retirement community in India, in Coimbatore, I actually installed a Alexa Echo Show in their home, and I have one in my kitchen table. And every morning we just do a 5-minute quick check-in. Mom, Dad, how are you doing? And that video call really makes a big difference. And then there are some days when my wife and I would both take it and we'll set it up next to the window and show them the snow and show them what my dad loves looking at the snow outside because he misses it in Coimbatore. And that communication is incredibly important, however you set it up. And you have to set it up in a way that doesn't make them feel like they have to log on to a computer or they hold a phone in front of their face. So something with a far field microphone, even if it's a dedicated machine. So I really love, whether it's the Google, Nest Home thing, the Alexa Echo Show. I'm okay with the speakers, but I'd much rather have the video. And off late, we've experimented. My in-laws live about an hour and a half away from us. And so we've installed the Facebook Portal TV. And the Portal TV essentially plugged into their 55-inch television. And, my kids have it, we have it, my sister has it. So when we talk, we're actually, looking at each other on a 50, 70-inch screen, and we're sitting far away on a sofa. It pans the whole living room. So it's more of a telepresence than it is just a conference. That communication is incredibly important at this stage. And then there are, of course, other technologies that are more tactical in nature. People want to know things like, hey, you want to measure oxygen levels, SpO2. Not everybody has a pulse ox, not everybody can get a pulse. You want to measure, the temperature, you want to measure heart rate variability, all of those kinds of things. And, temperature you can measure with a thermometer, almost everybody has it, but all the other things people don't have. Everybody has one of these, smartphone devices, right? They've all got these smartphone devices. For the most part. And with those smartphone devices and the cameras, there are now technologies that will essentially allow you to download an SpO2 device onto your iPhone or your Samsung. So there are technologies interestingly, a lot of them are developed out of Israel. They use this capability called Transdermal optical imaging. And with this video call, if I were to record it, I could probably tell you what your heart rate is, with the technologies, because there are when you breathe and when your heart rate happens, there are micro changes that happen in your skin, and we can monitor that and essentially derive with AI now and machine learning. We're able to go ahead and say, I know what this person's heart rate is. I know what their heart rate variability is because I can see it, and that's important. I can even measure what the oxygen saturation is in their bloodstream. So, now can you imagine I can actually download what used to be a medical device onto, using software onto this.
Correct.
Right? I saw this one company out of Canada called, Anura, that essentially can do a blood pressure determination using just the smartphone camera, and it's relatively accurate. I've tested it we've got, my wife's a cardiologist, so we've got blood pressure cuffs, we've got SpO2 pulse ox devices and everything else, in the home. And so I test these against the software intelligence and triage devices against hardware standards. And I'm really impressed with the accuracy of a lot of these. They don't quite qualify for medical because they haven't gone through the FDA certification process yet. But they will be, SMDs, software medical devices, in short order. So I think that kind of a technology that says this notion of a no-touch triage capability is really important.
And that's very important during COVID and in the new normal as well.
Correct. Yeah, and then the other thing, I've always been fascinated with this notion of wearables and technologies. I'm actually evaluating the Amazon Halo, device, and they have their place. The emergency response devices and the pendants and the watches that people wear are good, but the challenge with a lot of them is twofold. I've seen in my work with senior living communities, and I've worked for 10 years in senior living communities, that somehow pendants get lost behind the sofa and they forget to get charged.
Correct.
Because there is this whole, I don't want to feel old, which is typically and this gray looking thing essentially makes you look old and feel old, and that's why it'll get sabotaged by seniors. It'll just get dropped behind a sofa and they'll forget to charge it. And that's also real. They'll put it on the charger and then they'll forget to put it on. And then you miss it for 2 days, the habit goes away. And so wearables don't get worn. I think 86% of seniors that have wearables don't really conform to the 24/7 wearable regimen. So I'm a big believer in this whole notion of no touch, whether it's monitoring, triaging of any sort. And the two examples that I gave you, Bina.ai and Anura, the software-enabled, blood pressure and SpO2 stuff are really great. And I also believe that there are new technologies that are emerging. If you want to measure someone's activity level in they're not wearing their watch, so but so what? You can essentially use Doppler radar, devices. They actually now even have the ability to take your general Wi-Fi signals in the home. And when you walk through a Wi-Fi signal, or when you're even sitting there and your heart beats in a Wi-Fi environment, it disturbs that Wi-Fi signal in somewhere, and it's called Wi-Fi Doppler. And you can take that Wi-Fi Doppler, and it is practical solutions available today where you analyze it using AI, and I can tell you what your heartbeat is. I can tell you if you're moving around or not. I can tell you if you're moving slower than you did yesterday. And I can see that over time you're getting up 4 times a night to go to the bathroom. So potential signals of urinary tract infection. Right, so there is a ton of triaging that can be done with just normal, simple things that almost exist today because we're throwing away and we're flushing a lot of data down at this point, which we can really mine and start using.
Excellent.
So, I hope that gives you an idea of some of the technologies that are emerging that with minimal tweaks can be implemented. The marginal cost of downloading an app on your phone is 0, right? And I can now have blood pressure cuffs everywhere, and I can have SpO2 devices everywhere in India tomorrow.
I've got old parents. You've also got old parents. There's a lot of apprehension around this vaccine. Obviously, we are waiting for the phase 3 trial information as well, because these were on emergency approval. So coming back to what I started in this transition time, a lot of senior citizens are apprehensive about, the vaccine. Second, they're also apprehensive, should they get out home, and what precautions or what devices can they, use to actually, become mobile. So in this phase, before, everything goes back to the new normal, I just wanted to bring your thoughts or ideas once again on this whole point. What are we seeing? Are we seeing some sort of, conversational technologies or monitoring technologies which will play a role in this transition time till the new normal in the senior citizens' lives? We've got Arogya Setu and all, they do all this Bluetooth-based zoning and all, and there are other technologies as well. But are there anything that you're seeing in other parts of the world that we could probably bring it to India and use it in the short interim span of another 6 to 8 months for our senior citizens?
Are you talking about what can we do to get them more active? Or are you talking about do we monitor them as we go out?
Yeah, because see, some of them don't want to get immunized. Some of them want to go out but are scared of going out.
Okay.
In spite of all the social distancing issues and norms in India, they don't want to still venture out of home, or for a limited, they do venture out, but they're hesitant to venture out, out of home. What can we do to give them confidence to be mobile?
I'll address the question that you had about vaccination. I'm not a public health expert, so it's difficult to talk about the programs for vaccination. But I will tell you just from personal
experience.
Are there any
monitoring devices or apps that can help them, see, okay, this is the reality. My friend had a vaccination, no adverse event. Some sort of a social media app or something that can give them confidence. Okay, my friend had it. Instead of their calling or WhatsApping or whatnot, to allay their apprehensions around this whole vaccination. I think in India, the last vaccine they took was the DPT or the at the age of 6 months, which even they don't recall the pain or whatever in their lives. So for some of them, this is a bigger issue or a challenge.
Yeah, I have not seen any applications in the United States that inform you if your friends have taken vaccinations, and the reason is because of HIPAA. Right, you can't make that information public, and so it's social media that's essentially where people say, "Hey, I got vaccinated. I'm getting vaccinated, and I'll tell you about it." I have seen, on the other hand, there are COVID proximity apps that essentially Apple and Google have made available that say, "Hey, you got exposed to somebody with COVID because you have the app and the other person has the app, and then they got diagnosed with COVID, and they hit yes, I got diagnosed with COVID, and then it basically says I'll inform all the people that were in your proximity to let them know that they need to go get tested." Right. So that's there. But in terms of giving people confidence to go out, it's kind of a difficult thing unless you can create this whole proximity app. I have a friend of mine who was working on an app that basically will go ahead and do this. This proximity app can be used to alert people to say, "Hey, you're close to someone with COVID, so just watch your distance." Right. But I don't know if that's it's practical in a country like India where
there's no distancing.
Yeah, the distancing.
Everything is social. There's no distancing.
Yeah. How do you get to distance? So then your only choice is, hey, I'm gonna mask and I'm gonna double mask. And by the way, I am gonna cover my nose, not just my mouth. Yeah. So I keep sending notes to my parents when I see pictures from India that say we're masked, but they're friends with the noses uncovered. So, but you got to cover it. I also understand why they take it off, because it's a lot of these masks are incredibly difficult to breathe in.
Correct.
I've recently now taken to wearing an N95 mask because we were able to get it. And when I wear that and go into the market and 40 minutes in, it's difficult and I get really warm and tired. So I've actually now ordered a mask with a fan. It's you can essentially charge it, and it's got an N95 filter. And I ordered one for my wife, actually, because as when she's in the hospital, she's got to be masked all the time.
Correct.
And it's difficult to stay masked for 4 hours when you're going through the wards, right? So I actually ordered it for her so that she can have a mask that's got a good seal, and then it's got a fan that'll blow air through the filters, and you change the filter every day. And it's only the small filter, and that will make it possible for you to essentially not just have a mask but a respirator that you can wear for a longer time. So I see the evolution of that happening a lot. It may be really expensive to do a mass deployment, even in the United States. It'll be expensive to go mass deploy across India. But those are things I would watch out for, because I would look at and I would encourage entrepreneurs and manufacturers in India to start saying, this pandemic thing that we had just now is not just a unique event. We are probably going to see something once every decade at least of this magnitude. And we're going to have to find a way to tamp it down. So this was a good dry run for us. Let's prepare for the next bigger one. And we'll do that by creating these masks that are easy to wear, that people will wear. You make it so it's transparent so I can see your face, and and it's got the fan. So I think that kind of a technology investment would be worthwhile pretty much across the globe.
Let's shift gears a little bit on the new normal. Senior citizens want to live independently as much as they want to. And we as their caretakers and their parents and, our relatives, there are different technologies that are emerging. Smart homes, wearable, monitoring, tracking, robot to do some of the chores for them. If they're lonely, there are a whole host of conversational chatbots which are coming in. Again, Alexa and others, but even other solutions on top of your Microsoft Azure platform. And then some digital solutions, emergency response for them, safety and security when they're living alone. And lastly, but not the fitness and mental wellness as well. So let's talk about some of these points in the new normal. Where do you see these things going for the senior citizens? Are there anything promising that you're seeing in any of these technologies as well? So from a smart home, my parents use a Samsung device, and could put the smart home app, and then you can put all those sensors. At least in some of things, we have just put those sensors so that if there's a trigger and all. So they are very cheap solutions which are already there. But are there anything new that will happen in the new normal as well? And your thoughts on smart homes, because that's where it will enable them to live independently and not have people like us come and stay on an extended period of time to take care of them, especially during pandemic, have them their peace of mind.
Well, look, I think, I try not to look at technology first and then look at what might work. I try to look at what does someone need when they're living at home. They need safety and security, and then they need something that essentially says, in an emergency, I need to be able to reach out to.
Correct.
And then there's something that says, I've got a couple of daily things that I need to do that I sometimes need help with. And most importantly, I want to make sure that I feel happy and I feel like I'm needed, and I can talk to people, and I can do stuff, right? So from a safety and security perspective, the simplest of devices in terms of the smart home, you take an Alexa, Google, or any of these devices, and if you were to just attach the ability to go, so they can just say, turn the light on for me, right? It's great because where are the light switches typically? They're towards the corner, and sometimes there is a sofa sitting right in front of it, and they lean over, and what happens is a fall. So I look at a home, any home for that matter now, with the lens of, is that a fall risk? I look at the carpets and I say, hey, if the carpet is not stretched properly, it's a fall risk. And I look at where the light switches are, and I see what's in front of it, and I see if that's a fall risk, and I can avoid that by just being essentially voice enabling that stuff. I can say automatic temperature monitoring capabilities that will tell you. As a matter of fact, CVS just released this new product called Symphony Cvs Health, and they released a product called Symphony. And I'm really excited because they're one of the first people that has a national presence across the country. Basically 30,000 pharmacists, 10,000 pharmacies across the United States, and they're going to be able to support these technologies once they deploy it, right? And they've deployed this thing which will essentially monitor you, and if it's an emergency, you can just tell it. I can't use the word because it'll fire up here, and it'll essentially ask you if there is a problem and do I need to respond to something. So I think it's important to kind of have things that make it possible for them to not have to reach and do things, right? And then the other part of it is, yes, it is a solution for seniors, but what we really need to do is not just look at them. We need to look at the support structure that they have and enable the support structure around them, which is the caregivers, the families, the friends, the society around them. What is it that we can do to create an infrastructure they can share information amongst themselves? Like, for example, if you have like 3 kids and the parent is there, if I talk to mom or dad, it would be really nice to just kind of do a quick button check so all of my other siblings know that I spoke to mom or dad and they're okay. So there, and I'd like to have an indication that says nobody's spoken to mom or dad in 3 days. Just a quick little heads up. Nothing more than somebody tapping you on your shoulder, right? It's the tap on the shoulder that we all need, and technology now makes it possible for that to happen. And it's not rocket science technology.
Correct.
Right? It is just technology that's been used because we thought about the problem of what it is that we're really looking for the seniors to do. And there are other things that we need to now enable better. For example, cooking's an issue for them. So then, let's find a way for the rest, delivery services, things like DoorDash and other, India's got a whole bunch of delivery services.
Swiggy and what have you. Yes.
That are emerging. And the great thing about India is they've always had home food delivery, home drug delivery, home all of that stuff, and which is only now really starting to happen here in the Western societies. So that it is now possible for that to happen. Here we have TaskRabbit, which allows me to go request somebody to come in and change a bulb. Something happens in my home, I can do that. Now, if there is if I have a support group of people around me, I can use that caregiver app to basically say, hey, I need to get a bulb change whenever somebody's got time, just show up, and the person can just pick up the task, right? So I think it's just the activities of daily living and some of the risk factors that essentially we need to address. And I will say, and I keep coming back to falls because 1/3 of seniors over 65 fall every year, and especially if somebody with comorbidities like diabetes and things like that, the healing problem is a big issue. On the average, when a senior falls, it is less than a few months, about 7 to 8 weeks, that they end. A large part of them end up passing because it's very difficult to recover. They fall and break a hip and go to the hospital. You're talking about an issue where you really have to be. So we just need to help.
My great mom, at the age of 78, she was walking and she fell down and had a hip job, but she could never walk after that, and it was a downhill style for her and decay and slowing down of her life and lifestyle. You brought up a very important point in terms of enabling the life around being able to digitally order for services and stuff. There is a small study that was done here in India, and I'm not sure what the numbers look like, but the digital penetration in India is just less than 5% of the 130 million population. So you can imagine, 95% of them are digital, are natives, have not had, they may want to use it, but they are not senior citizen enabled of, apps or services. So that brings up to a big question about digital education or awareness for the senior citizens so that they are able to manage and order the services, goods that they require on a daily basis through the digital platforms. What's your thought there? What should the existing players and what your DoorDash and we have our Swiggies and Zomatos and Dunzos of the world, what should they be really doing for a senior citizen to be senior friendly in their service, perhaps?
So let me back up. I'm actually on the advisory board of an organization called cyberseniors.org. And Cyber Seniors basically puts together high school seniors and seniors together. So that there is technology education one way and hopefully wisdom transfer the other way.
Okay.
And there are probably about a half a dozen organizations that I know of that have evolved in this space that are specifically oriented towards training seniors on technology. I think that's kind of a wrong approach, but but that's what we live with, and so we're going to have to deal with helping them with the current environment. If I was doing a service of any sort, I'd basically say, what are seniors comfortable with? They're comfortable with talking. I would make everything voice enabled.
Okay.
I'd make everything voice enabled, and I'd probably put a screen on it if they're comfortable touching something. Otherwise I'll make everything voice enabled. And I think voice first is an approach that I think we need to look at for just about everything, because we've grown up storytelling, we've grown up speaking much long before writing, and everybody's comfortable with it. Now we just need to make that whole voice environment more friendly, and we're starting to evolve into that. We're starting to see, even with some of the Alexa devices and all, we're starting to see it say, did you mean this? Is this what you meant? I don't exactly get it. And that kind of an interactive conversation that is starting to happen is just really important. And we're still seeing evolution in banking and other industries where we're having this whole multi-platform conversational AI interactions. I can start an interaction on my phone, swap it over to my my mobile device, and then I can head over to a voice device, and I can carry on an interaction if I can program it the right way, right?
Correct.
But I think for seniors, we need to go ahead and say, what is it that you're most comfortable doing, right? You're most comfortable talking? And I'll enable the services. My Zomato service really needs to say, is there a way I can set something up for you? You normally like to order 6 things,
Correct.
right? I don't want you to go through a 20 menu item. I'll basically
Correct.
say, look, you ordered these 4 things the last time. Is this something you'd like to order? Because Amazon does it today.
Correct.
Right? Amazon does it today. They basically send me a notification reminder saying, hey, you ordered toilet paper 3 months ago when we had a crisis. Did you want to order it again? So, so the technology is not foreign, it's not new, it's emerged, it's there, it's deployed across in scale. We just need to start reorienting our brains in terms of how do we make it possible. And honestly, I believe that whether it is deploying for seniors or whether it is deploying for accessibility and reasons where we're catering to folks who are disabled, those kinds of edge deployments of ease of use really also benefit the general population in terms of they make much better user interfaces if we design for the people that have difficulty dealing with technology.
So here's what I'm try to move the technology behind the voice.
Yes.
Your app is there. Let the app have a layer of conversational chatbot or interface using voice that can enable the whole roster of services behind the app and enable that and make that as a ease of use for the seniors. That's a great idea. Unfortunately, what's your view on conversational bots? Because we have had, I would say, a lukewarm, or I would say 50-50 kind of experience in India on our COVID bot, which we launched. Obviously, different languages. So, there's a translational layer, different way people speak. So recognition issues, and then certain amount of latency going to the cloud and, trying to do that. So it's not a real conversational experience that we are still there. I'm not sure how the things are on the US side, but yes, it's starting. I think we should be there in next 2 years or 3 years with a much better experience of a conversation with different dialects and different tones and tonalities. And in India, because you've got tons of languages here, that diversity would be, obviously the technology would have to surface and move forward as well. So what's your view? When do you think this technology can really mature? First for the general masses, and then we can talk about getting it specifically to, the senior citizens.
Look, any early technology, I remember the days of the formative days of the internet, where folks are like, wow, this stuff is just a toy, right? What use is it for me to go use a mouse to go do stuff? And I really got excited the first time I saw a car commercial where there was a mouse, essentially pointing to something. And we're probably in the early stages of that, like with AI deployment, and a lot of these conversational bots have like an AI engine on the back end. We're still in the early stages of it. right? So when we say it doesn't work, it's because it's still early, it's bad. It's like a 1930s car. And if I were to take a look at a 1930s, 1940s car, we're probably going to say, really, what use is this thing? My horse can go faster. Maybe not in the 1930s, but a little earlier than that.
Okay.
And so I think the technology will evolve because the needs are going to make it evolve to it. I believe, again, whether you talk about kids or whether you talk about senior citizens, the most sophisticated technology is what you need to deploy for the least sophisticated user, right?
That's great,
the most advanced technology has to be deployed. I need magic, basically. I need the doors to open on their own. I need my wheelchair to essentially mobilize on its own, avoid obstacles, and get me to some. I need a drone robot in my home that will go get the medicine for me and bring it back, right?
That's a smart mobility.
Yeah.
Auto mobility device, I would say, that can do all the chores for them.
Yeah, and I think we also then, when the technology changes, we also need to redefine what is it that we're looking for. We didn't need faster horses. We didn't need more horses. We just needed to change the technology to an automobile. Now the question is, do you need the automobile at all, or is there a way to go avoid the automobile? And the COVID's kind of told us, you know what, you can really avoid the automobile in a lot of different ways, because if I can just make this remote technology better, if I can increase the bandwidth, I can standardize it, and the next step of that is I'm going to make it a virtual office. So my glass has now become an AR VR deployment, which allows me to then really see you next to me on the left side where we're not physically together. There's a company in Boston called Rendiver, and I love their technology because they will do a collaborative tour of the Vatican for 6 seniors sitting next to each other. So you guys are all together and you're like in the Vatican, right?
So this is a big impact to the travel and the fledgling travel and tourism industry, because a lot of senior citizens travel as part of their thing. And if you give this technology, I'm sure the airline industry, the hotel and hospitality industry, and everyone would really get impacted. So
yeah,
you're
but it's
getting
not going to be
a virtual experience, the physical, that a lot of senior citizens do as part of their, ways of ending time and experiencing good life.
I don't know if it'll kill it. Maybe it'll expand more people to travel than it was ever possible. And it may be better, right? Eventually, it'll make travel different, right? It'll change the nature of the industry. The fact that I don't need to go to the office doesn't mean I don't want to be in the office, right? If I still crave that face-to-face interaction. Now, the more the face-to-face interaction, this AR environment can simulate it, then you may crave it a little less. But you'll still need the physical touch. Until somebody comes up with these haptic gloves that essentially simulate the sense of touch. Yeah, and they're there. They're there, in some of the experimental environments. And the adult industry is certainly one of the leaders in technologies in this area. But I think we need to rethink it. We need to rethink, say, what is it that they're looking for? If I need food, then I can get the food to them. If I need medicine, I can get the medicine to them. If I need fresh air, then I can say, let me enable fresh air for you by taking you out, right? So I don't need the chore trips. I need the enjoyment trips, which essentially changes the nature of travel. But I think we have now to say, let's fundamentally rethink what the need is, what the real need is, and see if there is a way that this new technology environment can deliver that to you. And one of the things, for example, I've been working on is this notion of what is it that you need to do to help a senior age in place. And we said, okay, let's take a look at what their fundamental needs are. We went through this whole thing, it's the safety and security, it is a level of companionship and economics associated with it, purpose in life, education, acquisition of knowledge, and all of those things. And we've said, well, maybe there are programs that are there in silos. Let's put it all together. There's a program run out of Johns Hopkins University called Capable in the United States. It's been running for about 10 years, and hopefully it'll get more popular soon. It essentially works with seniors, and what they do is they take a nurse, an occupational therapist, and a maintenance person, and they go to the senior's home, and then they say, what do you like to do? What are your issues at home? And one story was, There was this lady who said, I really wish my son didn't have to come here every 2 weeks. I'm in a wheelchair. I wish my son didn't have to come here every week or 2 weeks to wash my hair. It's a matter of dignity for her, that she had to depend on her son and there was nobody else to do it and she couldn't afford it any other way. So son used to come and wash her hair. So the occupational therapist and the maintenance person looked at it and said, maybe we can figure it out. Look at your wheelchair, so I can create this large sink and I can install it for a few $100s. I'll put a washing sink that you can reach from your wheelchair. That fundamentally changed her level of independence, and it impacts all other aspects of life. Just because I'm now independent, I can feel more like I'm in control of my life.
Yeah, that brings up to 2 points that I want to delve further. One, we talked about companionship. I want to take that a little bit deeper. The second is personalization solutions for independent living. I guess that could be a big opportunity per se. I mean, just putting up a sink or whatever. That's personalization for their independent living. So on companionship, obviously Indian cultures, old people, it is, their age of meditation. People are reserved. I don't want to be living alone. Companionship is very much important. I guess there is a little bit of societal change. I guess the digital types of apps of Tinder and don't really work with seniors, right? Are there anything you're seeing in the societies in the West that are enabling this sort of solutions for companionship in the seniors?
I mean, there are certainly targeted applications like silver singles and things like that. For a friendship, they target things differently. I mean, Tinder gets in the United States, gets used in the United States a little bit differently than Tinder gets used in India, I understand. And
I'll just give an example. Tinder for the elders, seniors, senior citizens.
But like Silver Singles is an app that's emerged. There are like probably another half a dozen if I went and looked for it, that basically say, look, the reality is that we essentially need companionships and we've got to find a forum for it. There's an organization called Silver Nest, and there's another company that I just finished writing an article for these guys called Upside Home, and what they do is they will do a personality match and they will create and they'll essentially create roommate situations.
Okay.
And this is not male female only. It could be like the Golden Girls type of a thing where you say, 3 women live together, 3 women. I mean, and in this community, you can have a man and a male and a female live together, or 2 women and 1 man live together. I mean, that combination can happen based on what your personalities and what your needs are. But the idea is, let's find the right personality match and essentially see if we can create the roommate situation. So it addresses the social isolation issue. Yeah, number one. Number two, it addresses the economics issue that says, look, it's a lot more economical for 3 people to live together in this one place, and let's make that happen. Now, on top of that, they layer these services that say, okay, we're gonna make, and most seniors really in the US don't want to live in a senior living community. I mean, they want to live in the larger society. So what Upside Home does is they find 5 apartments in a large multi-generational building, and then they'll essentially maintain it, and they'll service them. They'll make sure that food gets delivered, they'll get, maintenance gets done. They have one single bill. So the senior is not responsible for the electricity bill and the TV bill and the this and the that, so it's just one single bill that gets addressed. And they also create a concierge type of a thing where this concierge is responsible for maybe 50 apartments, and then they will create opportunities for people to meet. They will create engagement opportunity, right? So it kind of addresses those kinds, and I think that's probably an opportunity that will emerge in India significantly.
There's a lot of taboo in our society. The guy has left his parents in Vidyash. That's the colloquial in the old age. What I was really thinking was, can we have a WeWorks type of a model for co-living for seniors?
Yeah, certainly. Co-housing is a huge movement.
Not a real estate model. All these developers create these sort of apartments with all the bouquet of services and everything around it. But a co-living model, which will be far more dignified for the senior citizens. And maybe we work with the government to say, okay, off certain tax and other rebates, since they are senior citizens, because the government anyway encourages a lot of these sort of services to be put in discounts for whether it's travel or what for senior citizens. I guess that should really work with the government and our policy people's encouragement in India. What do you think?
I happen to believe that co-living, co-housing is the model of the future across the globe. My wife and kids make fun of me because I keep saying that this whole concept of a nuclear family is a short failed experiment for humanity. It didn't exist 300 years ago, 200 years ago. It didn't, it probably won't exist, another 150 years from now. Because in that time frame, we've experimented with this nuclear family thing. And we now realize that it's got consequences in its own right. I mean, the family may look different. It may not be the biological family you grew up with, but it may just be some sort of a family that says, let's share in some of the responsibilities to let the village bring up the children. Let's share in the responsibilities to let our village take care of the elders, because it is difficult for just two people to take care of it, and especially with the demographic changes that we're seeing. You mentioned that India has got 10% of its population is now seniors.
And that's almost 50% of US population, 130 million.
But if you take a look at India, by 2050, 44% of the population is going to be seniors.
Correct.
That essentially means the number of people that can support them are also a lot smaller.
Correct.
So what do? You have to make that more efficient. You got to use technology. You got to use this responsibility sharing capabilities using co-housing. So it's not a matter of is it going to happen. It's a matter of when is it going to happen and how is it going to happen. I kind of feel like it's almost as inevitable as things like cryptocurrency. It's going to be there. It's a matter of when.
And what happens is then you can probably even get the whole personalization done.
Yes.
Okay, 3 people, different needs. You've already done that. Okay, the decor needs to be different, like what VWorks does for different companies, different tenants in a different way, and manages it. Yeah. So that's in the office environment, but I guess
it's like We Live, also, right? I mean, they've got the We Live thing, right? And so same kind of stuff.
And then I really believe does away all this whole issue of hospice, these other social issues relating to relatives saying, okay, this is my property, the church or the other guys provider saying it was assigned to me, and a lot of legal battles in India. So I'm not sure how much legal battles in US you have on properties and such unassigned rights given to different people out of heart by the seniors, but contested by their relatives later on.
I think property issues are a little bit easier to deal with in the US in general than they are in India.
India. I guess the next generation will get the benefit of.
But I think the government really needs to look at this as a long-term issue, right? For India in particular. Everything in India, the numbers are humongous. But this notion of 44% of the population essentially becoming elders, then you have all these elder abandonment issues that are going to be really surfacing hard in India. I mean, it's starting to surface across all societies, but for some reason, the demographics in the United States basically say that we're only going to be 22%, seniors in the 2050 timeframe, as opposed to India being, 44%. The demographic dividend that you currently have is going to come back to be a bomb down the road.
Correct. China is already facing that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's because of their one-child policy, right? You've essentially got one couple having 8 people to take care of, like 4 parents and and their grandparents.
8 grandparents. Correct.
Yeah, and the longevity dividend that we have causes there are benefits and issues associated with it. On the average, we've gained 3 years for every decade of life in the last century, but since 2010 through 2015. It became 5 years in every decade, and I think that there are people at that point were predicting that you could reach what's called longevity escape velocity by the time you're in 2045, which means every year the lifespan's going to increase 1 year. And although the COVID numbers have not been reflected in all of that, but it's only in the last year. In the United States, for example, lifespan has decreased because of chronic diseases and things that are really starting to take hold.
I want to shift gears, Ravi, and talk a little bit on innovation and startup in US and in India. So I have been making rounds on Coulter Foundation based in support with all the innovators from the academic medical research centers across the US. Some of the issues that I keep hearing and what you have mentioned, India is going to have 44% of elders or senior citizens by 2050. The price point that some of the innovators there come up for a smaller market, they make it up the profit on a larger volume. And that's what is the whole attraction of India. About 8 years back, when I was going back to US to evaluate a partner to come back and work with me on assisted living, and the field was the America pond was too big. They were happy with the whole opportunity. Now we have a lot of Australian and many other folks from this side of the world who are already entering in the India market. What sort of communication in the US ecosystem for innovators and startups on elder care, technology around aging, senior citizens, you like to probably convey, and how can we convince them to come to India and you work on the innovation on a larger mass market opportunity?
Again, I have a friend of mine who's a professor that works on a lot of this innovation framework, an Indian guy by the name of Ram Mudambi at Temple University. He might be a better guy to answer this question in terms of the larger policy level question. But I will, go back to this notion of, do we need to convince US innovators to come to India to work on something? Or can we just find the innovation in India?
Jugaad, that is our Jugaad innovation then.
Yeah. So HealthCube is an organization that's in India. And they've put together a device that essentially does multiple diagnostics in a very economical way. And I think it's being deployed by the Birla Foundation and folks like that for blood tests across different places. And I'm sure if we look around with the level of innovation incubators that are in India today, within a course of 12 to 24 months, you'll be able to come up with some incredible homegrown innovations that you can essentially spread across the country. Yeah, I was talking to an organization that runs 200 trucks in UP that essentially, they're basically medical trucks. And they go like once every 3 months, they visit someplace and then they'll essentially move off. And we were talking about what is it that you can do to take the ASHA workers that are in these communities and leave them a briefcase, so that while you're not there for those 3 months, they can still essentially do some level of triaging and send you information. So I was advising this company called Elara Health that is actually operating out of Kenya and also some in Rwanda right now. And so Emilian Pope was the CEO of the company. He's essentially from a finance and investment background, kind of like you, and he put together this solution, which is a clinic in a suitcase. So he's taken the butterfly hardware that's here for EKGs, with the iPhone, and a bunch of other things, and he's kind of created this little framework where you can essentially give it to a nurse in Kenya and say, hey, operate a clinic out of this thing, and you can do prenatal diagnostics, and a lot of disease diagnostics can be done pretty much out of this kind of a clinic in a suitcase. But what he's also done, which I really like, is he's created a financing model that basically says you can't buy this. This costs $30,000. There's no way you can afford to buy something like this, right? So I'm going to create a leasing model for you that makes me a partner in your clinic for a period of 7 years. Yeah, and I think that kind of an innovation where you've taken something that is more individualistic solutions, adapted it a little bit and put it in. For example, even if people can't afford smartphones, right? What can I do to fix that? I mean, I can essentially have one phone and a smartphone and essentially or an iPad or a camera and have people walk by it. Now I've done your daily blood pressure thing. As you're coming into work, everybody's blood pressure is measured, everybody's oxygenation level is measured, right? So you just adapt the technology for the population. So I would highly encourage, domestic growth rather than, we can look, but if we adapt, we take these existing technologies and, we pay respects to them and we adapt the technology for this market.
That's a nice way to go around rather than, what we were looking at. People to work and bring the innovation and partner model. Before I let you know, I have one last question. The level of insights and what you have provided on our talk today. I want to know, what are your resources and follow, and for the sake of our folks here, to be on top of the global trends in senior elder care, aging, independent living, assisted living, whatever you call. If you can enlighten some of our audiences, that will be really great.
Sure. There are probably a half a dozen people that are just incredible in this space. None of my ideas are ever original. I just listen to a lot of the things that those folks say, and it makes me sound somewhat intelligent. Lori Orlov runs a newsletter which essentially is called Aging in Tech, and she's probably one of the most well known in this space. For population demographics and things like that, Ken Dykewald is a significant resource. And for business models in senior living, Bob Kramer from Nexus Insights is one to look at. So these are the three that come top of mind, but I probably have a list of about a dozen that I keep so that I can go back and remember to check on them.
Excellent. Ravi, we are running out of time, but it was indeed a pleasure talking to you, interacting with you. We all are going through this transitional phase of taking care of our parents and our kids also in this normal pandemic phase. So we as a generation had this burden to carry for the last 1 year or 2 years now to be able to take care of both the generations in front of us and ahead of us as well. And a lot of them have been stressed out as well. I hope some of the things that you talked about would really help our listeners, and some of the seniors who also are listening on our podcast would also be encouraged to try out the technologies and be far more digitally active to be able to live independently as well. Before I let you go, I need to thank our sponsors, our team that has made this possible, our production team at the back end as well. We are going to come back, quote unquote, wealthy to talk about the future of startups. Thank you so much, Ravi, for talking to us and giving us this time, really being candid in talking about the fear of technology, which is there in some of our parents and our seniors, and how they can probably be able to adopt it and work around it.
For them. Yeah, it's our job to make it easy for them.
Yeah. Keep it simple for them.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
And stay safe. Bye-bye.
All right.